Regan Slaymaker for International Boxing News. Now, I had the pleasure to be joined by best-selling author Andy Clarke. Andy, how are you? Chris Billam-Smith versus Richard Riakporhe fight week.
Yeah, I'm really good. Best-selling. That's. I mean, it was at the top of the boxing charts for Amazon for a couple of days. Still doing pretty well. So yeah, that's been a lot of fun over the last couple of weeks. And I've been looking forward to this card since the fight was made, really, because I do think that this is a 50-50 fight. The bookmakers seem to see it differently. Riakporhe seems to be a strong favourite. I don't really see how you can come to that conclusion when you look at the two careers. I think it's a very, very difficult fight to call, and for that reason, one that, yeah, I've been looking forward to for weeks.
Definitely. Are you expecting a very different fight to the first one back in 2019?
Yeah, I think so, because they're both just so different now. Richard at that point had taken that succession of really difficult fights, and at that point the kind of panic was still quite close to the surface with him. He was inexperienced, and you could tell from the way that he his facial expressions, and he looked very uncomfortable in the ring at times in certain pockets of fights. That's gone now. He's a lot more experienced. That panic, and it was panic, I think it's much, much further below the surface. But BillamSmith is a much better all-round fighter now too. So I don't think the first fight really tells us much about this one. If you're Riakporhe, then it means something because he won. If you're Billam-Smith, I think you can legitimately just dismiss it as being meaningless in the context of Saturday.
Definitely as well. I spoke to Chris at the launch press conference, and he made a very good point of saying the wins since that fight, he's got the better wins on his record. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he has. I mean, he's the one whose career has really kicked on. He's the one who's proven at world level, hence he's a world champion, and Richard isn't. Now that doesn't mean that he can't make the step up, but when you're kind of assessing the form going into this fight, basically the form book is on Billam-Smith's side because he's the more tested of the two, and he's risen to the occasion, and he's boxed at a stadium being the home fighter, which is something that Richard's experiencing this week. I don't have any real worries about Riakporhe temperamentally. I think that he'll be able to handle the week and handle the occasion fine. We'll see. That's my personal opinion. But as for whether he'll win the fight, I mean, who knows? You know, he does have that genuine power that can take anyone out if he catches you right. So that is a possibility. But at the same time, what is also a possibility is Billam-Smith taking it into the second half of the fight, working at that tempo he likes to work at, and making life very, very difficult for Riakporhe. Because in the second half of the fight, has he got the stamina in a hard fight? Again, he may well have. It doesn't mean that he doesn't, but we don't know.
Definitely as well. Moving away from the main event, what would you say your pick of the bunch of the undercard is?
It's the one that's behind us now, Isaac Chamberlain against Jack Massey. I really, really like that fight because Massey's a good fighter and he's had to wait for his opportunities. In a way, they're quite similar, these two, in that regard, because Jack Massey had his fight for the British against Richard Riakporhe, lost it, close fight, over 12 rounds, and then for a long time after that, we had COVID, of course, but nothing really happened. He had to roll the dice and take a fight at heavyweight against Joseph Parker, which was an incredibly bold move. And he did really well that night. And he's had to wait quite a while after that to get this opportunity, but now he's got it, and I'm really pleased for him that he's got it. Isaac's been through something similar. He had the defeat against Okoli in a big fight, and then really not that much happened. He kind of disappeared for a while. There were things going on outside the ring. And then he had to roll the dice and get in with Billam-Smith in Bournemouth. And again, he took the chance. He didn't win, but he took the chance, and things have happened for him since. So in a way, their journeys have been quite similar. But they're very well matched, I think, because they're both good, well-drilled, well-schooled fighters, and I think they've both got the minerals for it as well. I don't think either one's going to be found lacking on the resilience front, so I think it's a really interesting fight.
Definitely. Do you think the winner, obviously the European title, it's not unheard of, winning the European title can push you onto that world level? Do you think it's right that the winner looks at the winner of the main event?
Yeah, I mean, that's what they'll be looking at. Yeah, absolutely, because if you win the European title, the next stop is world level, and you want to get there as quick as you can, whether you have to work your way into mandatory, which obviously could take some time, or whether as a British fighter we will still have a British world champion, whoever wins out of Billam-Smith and Riakporhe. it puts you in the frame. It's a possibility. So that's really what they're looking at, whoever wins this one.
Definitely as well. I mean, you're fresh off of a Saudi fight night, the 5 versus 5. I mean, it was excellent watching it from back home, let alone being there. But what was your kind of fight of the night that you look most fondly from?
It's hard to pick because there were so many good fights. It was just, they all really delivered as well. I think my performance of the night would be Dubois. I did quite fancy him because I thought he obviously took a lot from that win against Jarrell Miller, and Hrgović didn't really have a lot of momentum, whereas Daniel has some momentum. So that was a massive, massive win for him. And now maybe we'll see him fight Joshua at Wembley in September. That's how quickly things can turn around in boxing. He had the defeat against Usyk. Again, people labelled him a quitter. It was difficult for him. But then he had the win against Miller, now a win against Hrgović, and he could be boxing in one of the biggest fights in the world come a few months' time. So that was a massive performance. Hamzah Sheeraz was a big performance too. My favourite fight was probably Nick Ball against Ray Ford. I just thought that was a terrific fight all the way through.
Definitely as well. In the context of kind of British boxing, how big would that Dubois-Joshua fight be?
It'd be massive. It'd be massive because we always want to see all British fights because they ignite the imagination like nothing else. You think back to Lewis Bruno and the kind of emotions that stirred up, and you look at Ben Eubank and the amount of people that really got into the sport. There's nothing like it. You look at Joshua Dillian White back in the day that really kick-started Anthony's career as a pay-per-view fighter. There's just that feeling about them, that interest that they attract, and he's legitimate, Dubois. Nobody can look at him and say, oh, well, they just made that match because he's a British guy, this is going to be a one-sided beatdown. We don't know what will happen when the bell goes, but he's earned his right to be there because Hrgović was obviously number 1 ranked with the IBF, reckoned to be a real force, the best of the next crop maybe, and he beat him comprehensively. So I love it as a fight. I know it hasn't technically been made yet, but I'd be so disappointed and surprised if it didn't get made.
Definitely. Talking of ifs and buts, I mean, we'll talk about Hamzah Sheeraz as well. A lot of talk about a Chris Eubank Jr. fight. I mean, that would be, Hamzah said it himself, outside of a fight between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn, that's probably the next right fight for Chris Eubank Jr.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is, because he needs to forget about that fight against Conor Benn, because I don't see that happening anytime soon. Conor can't fight in the UK. That fight's still big outside of the UK for a UK viewing audience, but a fight like that's got to be here. That's where it would generate the interest, and it can't be for the foreseeable future. So for Eubank, there aren't that many other options, and this will float his boat. Fighting on a night like that is what he's all about, and it will be for a big purse, and he's done phenomenally well in his career of making sure that he maxes out his earning opportunities, and he will fancy his chances very strongly of beating Hamzah Sheeraz. It was a really good performance by Hamzah the other night, and I think he's got a lot going for him. But Eubank's last performance was a comprehensive win against Billam-Smith, so he's not going to have any. So long as the money is right, I would imagine that Chris will do it, and under the Saudis, the money will be right.
Definitely, and what a fight that will be as well. You're a big part of kind of the top tier kind of promotion and broadcast team as well. Talk to me, kind of what's it like being involved with Johnny Clarke? I mean, on those shows that I feel it's disrespectful to call it small hall as well.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I've been talking to Johnny for a while about doing some stuff, and it took quite a while for it to actually happen, just because I was busy with Sky basically. But yeah, I like doing a bit of other stuff, and particularly at that kind of level. He's putting a lot behind those shows. He does the media days. The arena the venue looks great on the night. He's got creative with it. This one we got coming up on the 29th. He's taken George Liddard and Jimmy Sains off Matchroom. He's taken them on loan because he knows they'll sell tickets. And they're really good fighters, and it really works for them because they get to fight in front of their home crowd. So that's clever. That's exactly the kind of thing that I think promoters who don't have a TV budget basically need to do. And he's got some good fighters coming through. So he's doing his thing, and I hope it pays off for him.
Definitely as well, Andy. My final one, obviously, you mentioned your book at the beginning. I've got it at home. Gutted I didn't bring it for you to sign. But for those that don't know that you've got the book, what is The Knockout about?
So it's an in-depth look basically at the knockout from all angles. So what does it feel like to knock somebody out? What does it feel like to get knocked out? What do fighters remember about it? How do they get over it? The impact it has on us watching it. The conflicting nature of it for us watching it as boxing fans. The mentality of how do you get in there in that kind of gunfight where it's you or the other person, and you know it could be you, but you have to be utterly determined that it won't be you. There's so much that goes into it. It was such an interesting subject to do, and the contributions I got from David Hay, Amit Khan, Carl Froch, Tony Bellew, Ricky Hatton, Matt Macklin, Johnny Nelson, loads of people was so good that it would have been really difficult for me not to write a half-decent book. So hopefully people read it. I think it is at least a half-decent book.
Definitely, and get your orders in. Andy, my final one, we ask everyone who comes on the channel this, when all's said and done, and you've just touched on it there, what does boxing mean to you?
Boxing's just the ultimate sport. It's just the ultimate sport. It's a sport like no other. It asks questions of its participants like no other sport does. You think about that slogan that's written on on gym walls up and down the country, all around the world. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And that's boxing, isn't it? If you've got the talent for it, then brilliant. But you've got to have everything else as well, or you just won't make it. People in other sports will say that that's true, and I'm sure that to a large degree they're right. But in boxing, you will get found out in there if you've cut any corners. It's just the most honest sport there is.
Definitely. What a perfect place to end. Andy Clarke, thank you very much. Looking forward to see you over the fight week, mate.